Imagine turning on the news and hearing, the Third Reich celebrates its 80th year in power. Streets are draped in red banners. Tokyo governs a vast ocean empire, and the Pressy United Nations was never coined. What if the Axis powers had won World War II? The answer isn't just chilling, it reaches into every corner of daily life. World War II reshaped the modern world. In our timeline, the Allies clawed back from disaster, toppled fascist regimes, and laid the groundwork for an imperfect but expanding global order: institutions, rights movements, scientific cooperation. But victory was never guaranteed. There were moments when a single misstep could have tipped the war. Britain nearly strangled it under the Blitz. The Eastern Front bled the USSR to the edge of collapse. The Pacific War swung on razor-thin naval battles. Now switch timelines. The Allied invasion of Normandy fails. The Luftwaffe holds the skies. The Wehrmacht never stalls in the Russian winter. Imperial Japan locks down the Pacific and starves American supply lines. In T's world, the Axis doesn't just survive, it defines the century. Let's walk through that world and see how it would change maps, homes, and human hopes. Picture Europe in the late 1940s under the New Order. Without a successful D-Day, Germany fortifies Atlantic defenses and crushes resistant cells from Paris to Warsaw. Vichy becomes permanent. London, pummeled and isolated. Signs of punitive peace. Its empire fractured under Axis pressure and colonial uprisings manipulated from Berlin and Tokyo. The Union Jack still flies over fewer places and with far less meaning. In the east, the Wehrmacht punches through to the Caucasus, seizing oil fields the way a starving man grabs bread. Moscow falls after a brutal siege. The Soviet Union splinters. What remains becomes a patchwork. Puppet regimes in the Baltics, a Reichskommissariat over Ukraine and the Western Steppe, and a frontier zone policed by SS units where maps are written in pencil and blood. From the Pyrenees to the Urals, one authority decides borders. The Reich, meanwhile, in Asia, Imperial Japan consolidates its greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere. Shanghai becomes a jewel of occupation. Manchuria, an industrial engine. Indonesia and Malaya, the empire's fuel tank. The Philippines are a military hub. Thailand, a compliant bridge. French Indochina remains under Japanese administration, its resources extracted with machine-like efficiency. Australia, cut off, clings to coastal fortresses behind a ring of mine sea lanes. New Zealand becomes a dim heartbeat on a radio net monitored by Tokyo. The United States facing two brutal fronts, war-weary and without European foothold sewers, a negotiated ceasefire that freezes this map in place. South America and parts of Africa navigate between Axis spheres, bargaining for breathing room. Neutral pockets survive Sweden's steel, Switzerland's banks. A handful of Portuguese and Spanish outposts, but neutrality now means tribute. The world is no longer a mosaic of nation-states. It is a chessboard of empires. Colonial rewrites. Decolonization stalls. Where it occurs, new states are born into Axis patronage. Their sovereignty, conditional and fragile. Refugees without refuge borders out of Dane. Stateless people move in circles, blocked by paperwork invented to deny them. Currency blocks. The Reichsmark dominates continental trade. The yen bloc rules the Western Pacific. Tariffs become political weapons. Open a schoolbook in Berlin in 1955. Biology spreads racist pseudoscience as truth. History erases dissent and sanctifies conquest. The morning hymn is, "To the state, children wear uniforms that replace childhood with ideology. They learn to march before they learn to question. Everywhere you go, there are eyes." Identification papers are checked at tram stops. Radio sets are stamped and tuned to approved frequencies. Neighbors report neighbors because fear is a form of currency. Art is a hallway lined with mirrors that only reflect the state's face. Films are triumphal epics. Music is martial and pure. Literature is scrubbed clean of ambiguity. Joy still exists. People marry, laugh, tell jokes, but laughter travels quietly and never through open windows. Across the sphere, Tokyo's order feels different, but rhymes with the European version. Compulsory language policies, factory schedules aligned to military needs, newspapers that read like parade manuals, local traditions survive as costumes for festivals, not as power. The labor calendar is a drill. Exports are quotas. Dissent is re-education. The Holocaust does not end. It metastasizes. Genocide extends into pacification campaigns against conquered peoples, political opponents, and anyone deemed degenerate. Camps become cities with barbed wire horizons. Trains run on time because time belongs to the state. The language of bureaucracy makes horror sound tidy. Technology advances just. Not for you. Early computers count people instead of possibilities. Cameras shrink so they can hide in corners. High-frequency radios whisper propaganda between continents. Jet engines scream over stadium rallies. Progress exists, but it bends toward control. Private life shrinks. Weddings require permits. Libraries check you out, not just books. A locked diary becomes an act of rebellion. Black markets bloom. Coffee, forbidden novels, jazz records. Antibiotics, anything scarce or banned, flows through hidden hands. Education turns inward. University research tilts to surveillance sciences, eugenics, and weapons. Brilliant minds, fencing in the human spirit. With Axios victory, the scaffolding of our world never goes up. There's no United Nations, no NATO, no European Union, no Bretton Woods system knitting economies together. There is no Marshall Plan to rebuild. There are reconstruction directives that prioritize factories and roads, that tanks like science is still brilliant. Humans can turn that off, but it grows like a tree trained to a wall. Powerful, fruitful, and curved where it should have spread. Rocketry whizzes fast. Satellites blink cold state emblems across the night. Space stations become billboards of empire, not laboratories of cooperation. When astronauts look down, they see a planet in compartments. Nuclear weapons proliferate earlier and wider. Deterrence becomes theology, with bombers on sacramental patrol. Accidents happen and vanish into secrecy. Some deserts glow invisibly. Some rivers run a little warmer than they should. Disasters do not galvanize global reform. They are buried beneath new monuments. Social revolutions stall. Without the moral shock of defeating fascism, the civil rights movement in the U.S. fights uphill without external momentum. Feminist gains arrive slower, in smaller rooms. LGBTQ+ lives are forced deeper underground. Anti-colonial movements are strangled by proxy regimes. Culture becomes regional and self-censored. Jazz still swings, but softly. Film noir never leaves its shadows. Climate policy, almost none. Industrial output is a metric of loyalty. Forests are quotas, oceans are cargo lanes. Medicine advances unevenly. Military trauma care soars. Public health lags. Vaccines exist, distribution doesn't. Information stays local. Without a free global internet, news spreads by WhisperNet pirated shortwave, Semistit, hand-copied zines. Now jump to today in this alternate world. Stadiums roar on cue. Aerial cameras turning crowds into kaleidoscopes of obedience. Evening news is synchronized. Identical scripts in Berlin, Vienna, Warsaw. In Tokyo, anchors speak in serene tones about productivity targets, met and dissidents, realigned with harmony. The graphics are beautiful. The facts are not. Drones hum at street level, reading faces the way librarians read spines. Rail stations bloom with biometric gates. Domestic passports log your movements. Travel to another continent, not without years of clean files and 3 levels of approval. Most people live in shrunken orbits: home, factory, ration hall, home. And yet the human spirit is a patient insurgent. Resistant cells flicker like campfires seen from far hills. Brief, bright, then dark, then bright again somewhere else. A choir in Prague sings a band melody with the windows closed. A dockworker in Yokohama slips a newsreel into a crate bound for a neutral port. A physicist in Munich mislabels a transistor shipment and a clandestine radio station is born. Kids draw symbols in chalk where cameras can't, see little constellations only rebels understand. Myths arise because myths are medicine. People pass around a legend of a pirate radio that interrupts parades with the sounds of rain in free cities. A rumor spreads. Somewhere, a library has a whole shelf of unredacted history. A whispered joke survives because it tells the truth in a way laughter can carry safely. If the state knows everything, why are they always asking for our papers? The regimes adapt, cracking down, then loosening, then cracking again. But pressure creates fractures invisible from the palace balcony and obvious at the kitchen table. Empires look immortal until the week they don't. If the Axis powers had won, the 20th century would read like a long winter, enforced order, industrial awe, and a stubborn cold where freedom should be. The map would look tidy. The lives on it would not. We'd inherit a world skilled at building rockets, mediocre at building trust, and allergic to memory. This thought experiment isn't just morbid curiosity. It is a lens that sharpens what we already know, but forget to easily. History is a stack of fragile decisions. The rights we carry speech, vote, movement, conscience exist because people bled for them, argued for them, organized for them. Often when winning looked impossible, they can be lost the way sunrise can be lost behind a mountain. Not forever, but long enough to change the day. So hold this alternate world up to the light of the real one. If it makes you uneasy, let that unease do something practical. Value the institutions that make disagreements safe. The journalists who make secrets expensive, the teachers who arm kids with questions, the neighbors who insist that decency is not optional. Freedom is not a default setting. It is a maintenance job. If this alternate timeline gave you chills, push a little further. What if the Cold War turned hot? Imagine the first 12 hours after the unthinkable, the maps that vanish, the cities that endure, and the strange ways humanity adapts when the sky itself is the enemy. Tap to explore the next what if. Subscribe and hit that notification bell, because we're exploring the scenarios that make you go, wait, that would actually be amazing. See you in the next mind-bending possibility.